Salut les amis! Hello friends et bienvenue au premier chapitre. Welcome to the first chapter. Chapitre 1. Chapter 1. We have a lot to do today. We're going to get started. Our first few steps into the French language. J'espère que vous avez envie d'apprendre. I hope that you are excited to learn, that you want to learn. Because, il y a beaucoup. There's a lot there. So, what are we going to do? We're going to go over the memory page, the grammar, and then do some exercises in a worksheet, and then you'll have a chance to review with your quiz. So, today we're going to get started by looking at a very, very basic part of French. We're going to get started by looking at a verb. Do you know what a verb is? I'm going to put some words up on the board. I want you to tell me if you have any idea how we could group these words together. And then we'll see what a verb is doing. Okay, so look at these words for me, will you? Yogurt. Toilet. Push. Eat. Staircase. Camera. Funny. And let's say throw. All right, so tell me, as you look at these words up there, which of these words seem like action words to you? I hope you're not saying yogurt. I've never seen somebody yogurt before. I hope you wouldn't say staircase. That doesn't seem like a very exciting kind of action. What about the word funny? Did you funny last week? Me neither. I don't think anybody ever funnies. How about toilet? Not really a great action word, huh? All right, what about camera? I'm going to camera tomorrow. Are you coming? That doesn't work. What's left? Push. Hey, don't push me. That would be an action. All right. What about eat? Are you eating right now? Okay. Well, that could be an action that I hope you're not doing. It's hard to speak French with your mouth full. Bien sûr, of course. And throw. Yeah, I think we could throw things. That would be a pretty significant action to throw. Push, eat, throw. These are all action words. These are all verbs. So that is what we're going to be learning about today, verbs in French. How can we describe or how can we identify a verb in French? Before we get to the heart of our grammar lesson though, as usual, we're going to go through our memory page where we'll read a dialogue, we'll go through a chant so we can practice some different kinds of words together, and I'll say them and you'll have a chance to repeat. Then we'll talk about some of our vocabulaire, for this chapter, and then we'll get into the heart of the chapter. And that's how it will work every week. So, vous êtes prêts? Are you ready? Allons-y, let's go. Our dialogue on the memory page is the first episode in the adventures of Aurélie and Jean. Les aventures d'Aurélie et Jean. The adventures of Aurélie and Jean. Our story begins a long time ago on an ordinary day in a faraway forest, where an unfortunate mix-up has just taken place. Zookeepers from a distant city have traveled deep into the woods in order to release back into the wild 2 endangered species that have been nursed for years in captivity. However, instead of bringing along the rare spotted horse and miniature raccoon, the zookeepers have accidentally transported a crate containing Aurélie, a jolly but somewhat dim-witted milk cow, and Jean, a common field mouse, both from the petting zoo. As the zoo team retreats to their boat for the long trip home, the timed door on the crate slowly opens, and out step the 2 animals. After a few moments, the horror of what has happened dawns on Jean, and as usual, nothing really dawns on Aurélie. So let's begin their conversation. Aurélie says, Ça va? Jean, Ça va? You're asking me, Ça va, right now? What are you, nuts? Just look around. Do you have any idea where we are? Aurélie, Non? Alors, ça va? No! Things are not going okay. Just look at this place. Je regarde. Alors? Look! Je regarde. Je regarde. Alors? Aurélie, don't you realize what's happened? No. There's been a mistake at the zoo. They've released us into the wild. We're in the middle of a gigantic forest. No. Jean, yes, unbelievable. Our pen isn't even close to the endangered species, and we look very unendangered. Hey, Aurélie, I'm talking here. You want to listen? Hey, je parle. Aurélie. Chut, says Aurélie. J'étudie. Jean, huh? You're studying? What are you studying? Aurélie, j'étudie la carte. What? You have a map? Oui! All right. Our chant for this first chapter is going to use one of the key words that we saw in this dialogue. The chant's title is Je parle, I speak, or I am speaking. So I'll go through the chant once by myself, and then I'll go through a second time with a chance for you to repeat just after I've said a single line. Here we go. Je parle, chut, chut, chut. Now, I'll say it again, and you can repeat. Je parle, chut, chut, chut. Got it. Great. Let's look at some of the vocabulary that we have heard in this first episode of Jean and Aurélie. Aurélie and Jean, the poor, hapless creatures from the petting zoo. Le vocabulaire, the vocabulary. I'll read in French, and I'll give you a translation in English. And you can feel free to repeat the French as I say it too. Regardez, je regarde. To look, I look. Étudier, j'étudie. To study, I study. Parler, je parle. To speak, I speak. La vache, the cow. La souris, the mouse. La carte, the map. Le français, French. Et, and, avec, with, à, to, or at. The word à can mean to or at. Now, underneath the vocabulaire, the vocabulary, vous avez the conversation journal. The conversation journal is where we have expressions that are a little bit less formal, maybe that are used more in people talking to each other, and you might not always see them written down in books or magazines, but sometimes you might. So, here are some expressions from today's dialogue, or this week's dialogue, that you might have heard. First of all, I'll go through the list and then I'll explain some of them. First of all, we had ça va. Ça va, which can mean, how are you? Things are going fine. How's it going? And I'll explain that in 1 second. The rest of the list, though, is alors, which means so, as in, so you want to go fishing? Or so what do you mean? Or so what should we do now? Oui means yes. Non means no. Chut is the way French speakers say shh. and it means be quiet. Chut. Let's go back to that expression ça va one more time. Ça va, I just said, can mean how are you? How's it going? How are things? It can also be an answer to that question. So if I ask you the question ça va, you can answer it by saying ça va. Ça va? Ça va. Ça va? Ça va. Ça va? Okay, you got the idea. How do you know what ça va means then? If it can be either a question or an answer, how can we translate ça va? Well, don't worry about it. You'll be able to tell from the way somebody says it. If they say ça va with their voice going up, you know it's a question. If they say ça va with their voice going down, you know they're saying, as an answer, things are going okay. Things are going all right. Ça va? Ça va. Bingo. All right. So, now we can get into our grammar section. Allez-y. Let's go. So, do you remember at the very beginning when I put up all those words on the board? Do you remember the 3 words we had agreed on that were action words? They were eat, push, and throw, right? You can eat something, you can push someone, or you could throw a ball. They're all action words. These are what we call verbs. Verbs. A verb and 3 verbs. Okay? We're going to be introducing you to lots of words like this throughout the book. Verbs. On an everyday basis, in your everyday conversation, you probably don't go around talking to your friends about verbs, right? But in this book, we'll have lots of terms that are talking about language. Lots of words that are talking about other words. And you know why this is useful? So that every time I want to talk about a word that performs an action, I don't have to say a word that performs an action. I can just say a verb. Or every time I want to talk about a word that can perform an action, I don't have to say, you know, words like eat and throw and push. I can just use a word that we all know what it means. A verb is a word that performs an action word. That's why it's useful to have these kinds of labels to talk about other words. You'll see, we've got lots of fancy labels in this book. Okay, so these are verbs. Mais attendez, but wait a second. Ce n'est pas français, ça. Tout ça, ce n'est pas français. C'est de l'anglais. This is not French. This is not French, this is English. Alors, we need to put some français on the board. Alors, en français, in French, we had, in our chant, we had this sentence. Je parle. Je parle. And we said that this sentence means I speak, or I am speaking. This word means I, je, and this word means speak, or I am speaking. We have some other words that go with je that we learned in this vocabulary list. Do you remember what they are? If you want to, turn back there now and look. We had je regarde, je regarde, and j'étudie. Je regarde and j'étudie. This one means I look. I'll write this in another color. Une autre couleur. Another color. I look, or I am looking. And this one means I study, or I am studying. Okay, so check it out. We've got some verbs in French. Which ones are the verbs? I, that doesn't seem like an action word. You can't I somebody. You can't say, yesterday I eyed. That's not an action word. But speak, look, study, those are action words, right? So, in French, now it's time to effacer, erase the English. Au revoir, goodbye, English. I speak, je parle. Parle is a verb. Je regarde. Regarde is a verb. J'étudie. Étudie is a verb. Got it? Good. So, you might have a question though. If I were you, I would say, wait a minute. One of these is not like the other. Here, you have je, and that means I. And here, you have je, and that means I. Je parle, je regarde. But here, you've just got a J with a little apostrophe that's called, that little mark. An apostrophe. That's not je, right? Well, actually, it turns out that that is the word I in French. And once upon a time, you could say, in your brain, before it comes out of your mouth, you would have the word je plus the word étudie, study. But these two things, because this letter and this letter are both vowels, vowels are sounds that you make by making your vocal cords vibrate, and your mouth is open, and all the air is escaping. Je, and e, those are both vowels. Because these are both vowels, in French, we've got to get rid of the vowel from the word je. Otherwise, we would get two vowels in a row. Two vowels in a row is not allowed when you're going from a word like I to a verb like étudie. In some other situations, you can have that. But when you're going from a word like I or you or he or she, which we'll study soon, you can't have a vowel connected directly to a verb like that. Especially the word je. Some of the other words you can, but the word je, you cannot. The vowel from je needs to go out. Okay? The vowel from je, that e vowel, it's a very weak vowel, you'll see. Words like je, and later on, words like le, and even some words like ne. All of these poor little words, when they get up next to other words that have vowels, this poor little vowel, e, disappears. Okay, so that is why j'étudie looks a bit different from je parle and je regarde. But if I were you, I would have une autre question, another question, une autre question. I would say, hey teacher, hey professeur, je parle. You said that this could be translated in English as I speak or I am speaking. Attendez. Wait. Attendez. Je parle. I see two words. Je parle. I speak. Okay, two words. I am speaking is 3 words. How do you get 2 words to become 3 words? How does that work? Okay, this is a really, really important point. And let me start by completely ignoring it. What I want to say before we talk about that is that if you look at your vocabulary list, if you look at that list, regardez, je regarde, étudie, j'étudie, parler, je parle, la vache, la souris, all of these words that we've learned. Most of the time, the vast majority of the time, if you see a word, la vache, and you see the translation in English, the cow, maybe you see this in your French book, maybe you see this in a French dictionary, but if you see a word and you see the translation, most of the time, what you see is what you get. La vache means the cow. There is no situation where la vache does not mean the cow. Okay? The majority, that is, by far, most of the words that you will learn in this book and in any second language, if you look in the dictionary and see, say, a word like cow, and you see the English translation, cow, that's it. It's not more complicated. But there are some words, and sometimes some groups of words, that we can't always just look at and say, oh, the English version of this thing is this thing. Every time, 100%. In this case, la vache, yeah, 100%, no problem. La vache, the cow, no problem. But let me go back now to this mysterious transformation of je parle to I am speaking. In French, there is no difference between I speak and I am speaking. There is no difference that you can see, or no difference that you can hear. Je parle, I am speaking, and I speak. Both of these things are part of the expression je parle. I am speaking and I speak. Now, does that mean that a French speaker has no idea which one to use in which situation? Or a French speaker has no idea about the different kinds of situations where you could say, I am speaking and I speak? No. A French speaker could understand them because, for example, lots of French speakers learn English and they're able to use these expressions perfectly well. They have no problem. They can imagine and they can think of different situations where you would say, I am speaking and I speak. But in their language, when they grew up, je parle was the only expression they had, and it was able to mean both of these things. Okay, let's look at maybe an example of how these things are different and how French handles that difference. Okay, well, it's not so much how French handles that difference that we're worried about. Let's be worried about us for a second. How should we handle that difference? So think of two different situations. Think of two different situations where you see the words je parle in French. Because I don't want you to get nervous and say, ah, je parle. How should I translate this into English? Should I say, I am speaking, or should I say, I speak? Attendez, ne vous inquiétez pas. Don't worry. Don't worry. let me show you two situations where it will be very clear which one you should choose. So if I say, shh, or maybe, because you know the word for it now, chut. In French, je parle on the phone. Je parle on the phone. Let's say we had forgotten to translate this bit into French. Je parle on the phone. Chut, chut. Compare that sentence to this one. Every Saturday, je parle to my grandmother, my grandmom, on the phone. Imagine we had just not translated the rest of these sentences into French, because the French, it's kind of complicated to say the rest of these things. But for our first lesson, let's just imagine that this whole sentence was in French. And we can imagine that this whole sentence was in French. How, my question for you, ma question pour vous, my question for you, how would you translate je pars in these two different sentences? Would you say chut or shh, I speak on the phone? Or would you say chut, shh, I am speaking on the phone? I think you would say I am speaking. I am speaking. Shh, I am speaking on the phone. And down here, every Saturday, je parle to my grandmom on the phone. Would you say, every Saturday, I am speaking to my grandmom on the phone? Or would you say, every Saturday, I speak to my grandmom on the phone? I think you would say, I speak. I speak. Okay. That was a situation, these two sentences, number 1 and number 2, these two sentences, in French, you can imagine these in French, translating them back to English isn't so difficult. Because look, when there's an action that's happening right now, you can tell it's happening right now. Somebody's saying, shh, on the phone, they're on the phone. Shh. The action happening right now, in English, you get I am speaking on the phone. I am speaking on the phone. However, if you see in the sentence that it's an action that happens once in a while, regularly, at a certain time, then it's more natural to translate je parle as I speak, or any verb in this form, I speak, and not I am speaking. There's a difference. If you want the fancy labels for these forms, we call this one, I am speaking, the present progressive. Present, like right now, in the present. There is an action in progress. Present progressive. It's happening. Shh, I'm on the phone. I'm speaking on the phone. Shh. This one, number 2, we call the present simple, or the simple present. Simple present. And that's for describing things that happen normally in a routine. Oh, every Tuesday I speak to my brother on the phone. Every year I speak to my extended family. Right? It's a routine. It happens regularly. That we call the simple present. Actually, we don't call it the present simple. In French, they call it the present simple. In English, we just call it the simple present. And the one where it's an action happening right now in the situation, you can see it or you can imagine it right now, that we call the present progressive. And so, the bottom line, the end of the story is, if you can see the situation and understand which situation you're in, you'll have no problem translating the word. No problem. Now, with that being said, in this book, it's hard to get a good idea of all the different situations. For example, you'll have exercises that are just one sentence that you, say, have to translate into English, or from English into French. Now, it might not be possible to know which situation you're in. If you're in a situation where a person is speaking, or if you're in a situation where a person speaks. That's okay. In the answer key for all the exercises, we'll have both answers. You don't need to write both answers all the time. All you need to do is to pick one of them that makes sense to you, and as long as you can imagine a situation where your answer makes sense, ça va. Ça va. It's okay. That's okay. Ça va. All right? We have lots of situations, in fact, in this book where you'll be able to maybe translate something one way or maybe translate it another way. And we try as hard as we can to put as many options in the answer section as we can. But we don't expect you to write in every possible answer it could be, every possible situation. We don't want you to go crazy. Foo! We don't want you to be crazy. We want you to find an answer that you can explain by talking about the situation you're imagining. That's all. C'est tout. C'est tout. Okay. Let's look, before we move to the worksheet section, let's just take a peek at the dialogue one more time, and we can see how in the dialogue we can probably guess which meaning I am speaking or I speak. We can guess which one of those, the progressive or the simple present, we can guess which one of those is being used. Let's look. I am looking at where Jean says, "No, things are not going okay. Just look at this place." Aurélie says, "Je regarde." Alors? Remember what this means? Regarde. Regarde can mean, je regarde can mean, I look, or I am looking. Regarde. Feel your tongue in the back of your throat as you say regarde. Regarde. So, which one do you think we should use when we translate? Jean has just said, look around, and Aurélie says, je regarde. Do you think it would make more sense to say, look around, and Aurélie say, I look, I look, I look? No. It would be more natural in English to say, I'm looking, I'm looking. And in fact, Aurélie repeats herself. Jean insists, look, and Aurélie says again, je regarde, je regarde. The most natural translation for us would be, I'm looking, I'm looking. So you see, in this situation, because we actually had a whole story and we could imagine the situation, it was very easy for us to picture Aurélie saying, I'm looking, I'm looking. She's right in a moment where the action is happening as she's talking, right? It's not a routine. It's not something that happens once in a while. She's saying, right now, I'm looking. What's wrong? Okay? So, let's go to our worksheet section and look at some of the exercises together. Regardons. Let's look at some of the exercises together. Okay. I'll take a sentence directly from the worksheet section. It's the first exercise called translation, where you're asked to translate a word or a group of words, maybe a full sentence, from French into English. Why don't we do one together? I'll pick the one that says, Je parle à la vache. Okay. Je parle à la vache. Let's see. Je, that means I, right? We learned from je regarde, j'étudie, je parle. Je means I. Okay. What should I do next? I feel like I've just found the most important word of the sentence. I found the word of the thing that's going to do the action. But now I have to figure out what the action is. Where is the action word here? Where's the verb? It's parle, right? Parle. I parle. Je parle. I speak. À la vache. À la vache. The word à can mean to or at. Okay, so let's try both of them. To, at. We'll just put down both of them. And then we can choose later which one makes the most sense. I speak to or at la vache. Okay, la vache, we know. That means the cow. Je parle à la vache. Okay, so what would you feel most comfortable with? Would you want to say, I speak at the cow, or I speak to the cow? I think normally we say, I speak to someone or something, right? So this little word, à, we will say is to in this situation. And you'll see later in the book that the word à can be translated differently depending on the situation. All right, did you see how we just did that? My recommendation when you're translating any sentence is first to look for the person or the place or the thing that is doing some action or that is being something, the person or the place or the thing that is doing something or being something, and then look for the verb, the action word. You know, every language in the whole world has a verb or has verbs. You'll find verbs everywhere. So French has them, English has them, and any other language you decide to study will have verbs. So they're a very important kind or category of word. So look for the thing doing the action, and then look for the action. Here we found the thing, in this case it was a person, I doing the action, and here we found the action. We found I, and then we found the verb. Great. I speak to the cow. Now, could we have translated this, I am speaking to the cow? Ça va? Is this okay? Ça va? Oui, ça va. No problem. It would be a different situation, right? The first one would be, I speak to the cow when I go to the barn, or I speak to the cow when the cow calls me, or I speak to the cow every Thursday, some kind of routine, something I do regularly. And the second one would be, shh, I'm speaking to the cow right now. Shh, right now, it's happening. They would be different situations, but yeah, in terms of the grammar, they're both fine translations, okay? Again, you only need to come up with one translation, one correct translation. Both of these are correct. Okay, let's do another one together. How about one that is not in the worksheet section, but one that I can base off of the sentences you do have to work on? Let's try this one. That way, I won't do too many of the ones that you're supposed to do. I know you probably wouldn't complain if I did that, but just in case, I want to make sure you feel like you have enough to do. Donc, so. J'étudie le français. J'étudie le français. All right, remember, je plus étudie is j'étudie. So this is just I. Again, we found the thing doing the action, I. Étudie is study. Étudie, I study. Le français. Le français is French. Now, you might say, oh, le français? Isn't that 2 words? Yeah. In French, if I were to translate every single word in this sentence, it would be I study, and the word le means the French. But would you ever say, I study the French? Nope. And you would sound pretty funny if you did. I study the French. Oh, really? I study the German. Ah, I study the Latin. No, nobody talks like that. And because that would not be natural to translate back into English, ça va. It's okay. We don't have to do it. Because what a French speaker means when he says, j'étudie le français, what they mean is the same thing that we mean when we say, I study French. The thought is the same. It just so happens that the word the occurs in the French sentence, but it doesn't in the English sentence. So here's another example of where we can't always translate each word in a sentence. In fact, you come across sounding pretty silly if you do that sometimes. This is a really important point. We'll stop here for today in terms of the translation that we're doing, but I really want you to understand this point, that if you are insistent and if you must absolutely always translate every word from French into English or every word from English into French, lots of times that won't work. It won't work because different languages have different ways of expressing the same meaning. For us, in English, when we say I study French, we understand that, yes, you're studying a language, the language spoken by people living in Quebec, in Canada, and France, in Europe, and in lots of countries in West Africa. You're studying this language. Did you know French was spoken in all those places? French is one of the biggest languages in the world. It's spoken not just in France, but in Canada, in West Africa, in lots of islands in the South Pacific. It's spoken in South America. It's spoken in lots of countries besides France, in Europe. It's spoken in a lot of places. Anyway, I'm getting off the point, which is a very important point. The point is, if you insist on translating every single word into English, you'll come off sounding kind of funny. And if you insist on translating every word from English into French, you'll come off sounding kind of funny. What you need to do is to pay attention to the different ways languages have of expressing similar meanings. I study French. For a French speaker, this is how you say it. J'étudie le français. J'étudie le français. It may sound a little strange, but you know what? Let me tell you something. You, when you are learning French, you are learning a foreign language, right? Do you know how to say foreign language in French? Langue, language. Oops. Étrangère. Langue étrangère. Strange language. That's how you say foreign language in French. So, of course it sounds strange. It's a strange language, but that's okay, because French people will understand exactly what you mean if you use the words in the way that they use them. Just like if a French speaker insisted on saying, I speak the English, I speak the English, you would say, yeah, calm down. I have no idea what you mean, the English. Just say, I speak English, right? Same thing. All right, so with that, we'll stop our first lesson. We'll move on to chapitre 2, and remember, the more that you practice translating these sentences, the more that you play the video and listen to the audio tracks, the easier this will become. All right, bon courage, and à bientôt.